A dimming streetlight flickers above a rain-slicked intersection in Boston. A midnight blue Tesla pulls up to a red light, its contours glistening under the amber glow. Inside, Dr. Elijah Carter, one of the nation's leading neurosurgeons, checks his rearview mirror. His 16-year-old son, Marcus, sits beside him, scrolling through his phone, headphones halfway on. They're coming home from Marcus's basketball tournament, a victory celebration cut short by Elijah's early morning surgery schedule. "Dad, coach said I might start next game," Marcus says, removing one headphone. Elijah smiles, genuine pride warming his features. At 52, he carries himself with the quiet dignity of a man who has spent decades navigating two worlds, the pristine halls of Boston Memorial Hospital, where he saves lives, and the unwritten rule book of being a black man in America. "That's outstanding, son. Your crossover's looking sharp." Elijah reaches over, gently squeezes his son's shoulder. "Your mother would have been courtside, screaming louder than anyone. 5 years since cancer took Jessica, and her absence still punctuates their happiest moments." Marcus nods, looking down at his phone. He's tall for 16, lanky in the way that promises future strength, with his mother's eyes and his father's determined jaw. The light turns green. Elijah accelerates smoothly, mindful of the late hour and empty streets. 3 blocks from home, blue and red lights suddenly flash behind them. Elijah checks his speed, 10 under the limit. He signals, pulls to the curb with practiced precision. "Phone down," he says quietly to Marcus, hands visible. Marcus obeys, but not before tapping his phone screen. The recording app blinks to life, camera facing the driver's side window. Elijah rolls down his window, places both hands on the wheel at 10 and 2. He doesn't turn, doesn't reach for his wallet. He waits. The cold April air rushes in, carrying the scent of imminent rain. Officer Michael Brennan approaches, flashlight beam cutting through the Tesla's interior. He's young, maybe 30, with close, cropped hair and a jaw that looks permanently clenched. His partner, Officer Peter Sullivan, hangs back, hand resting casually on his holster. "License and registration," Brennan says. "No preamble, no explanation for the stop." "Officer, may I ask why I've been pulled over?" Elijah asks, voice measured, professional, the same tone he uses to deliver difficult diagnoses. "License and registration," Brennan repeats, louder this time. "Now, my license is in my wallet, in my back pocket. I'm going to reach for it slowly." Elijah narrates each movement with deliberate calm, the way his father taught him, the way he taught Marcus. A ritual of survival passed down through generations. The officer's flashlight remains trained on Elijah's face, momentarily blinding him. This vehicle was reported stolen on Beacon Street earlier tonight. Elijah pauses, confusion evident. "Officer, there must be some mistake. I've owned this car for 3 years." "Step out of the vehicle, sir." Brennan's hand shifts to his belt. "Dad," Marcus's voice wavers, adolescence betraying his attempt at composure. "It's all right, son. Stay calm." Elijah tries to catch the officer's eye. "My son is 16. Can he remain in the car? I have documentation in the glove compartment proving ownership." "I said step out." Brennan yanks the door open. What happens next unfolds in 18 seconds that will change everything. Elijah unbuckles his seatbelt, maintains eye contact with Brennan. "I'm complying, officer." As he steps out, Brennan grabs his arm, twisting it behind his back. The sudden movement catches Elijah off balance. His shoulder, an old basketball injury from his Howard University days, screams in protest. A reflexive jerk, an instinctive pull away from pain. "Stop resisting," Brennan shouts, though Elijah hasn't resisted. "I'm not," Elijah begins, but the rest is lost as Brennan slams him against the car. Marcus scrambles from the passenger side.
"Stop! That's my dad!"
He wasn't. Sullivan intercepts, pushes Marcus back.
"Stay in the vehicle, kid."
Elijah tries to turn his head to reassure his son, to tell him to get back in the car. "Marcus, it's okay." The first blow catches Elijah in the ribs, the second across his cheekbone. The third drives him to his knees on the wet asphalt. "Dad," Marcus shouts, phone still recording, capturing everything. Brennan has Elijah pinned now, knee against his back. "Stop resisting arrest." "I'm a doctor," Elijah gasps, tasting blood. "Chief of neurosurgery at Boston Memorial." Brennan pauses, uncertainty flashing across his face. Then his radio crackles. Another voice, female. Unit 437, be advised, stolen vehicle is a black Tesla Model X, license plate Sierra, Charlie 769. Suspect is believed armed. Sullivan leans down, checks the plate on Elijah's car. This is Echo, Charlie 543. Different vehicle. A moment of silence. Rain begins to fall, gentle at first, then a sudden downpour. Shit, Brennan mutters, easing his grip slightly. But it's too late. The damage is done. Blood from Elijah's split lip mixes with rainwater, spreading across the pavement in pale crimson tendrils. Marcus stands frozen, phone still recording, tears streaming down his face, invisible in the rain. Later, people will ask why Elijah didn't fight back, why he didn't sue immediately, why he didn't scream for help. What they won't understand is this: in that moment, pinned to the ground, his son watching, all Dr. Elijah Carter wanted was for everyone to survive the night. And they did survive. But surviving is just the beginning of their story. Because what Officer Brennan couldn't have known, what would soon send shockwaves through Boston's power structure, was that he hadn't just assaulted a doctor. He'd struck the match that would ignite a firestorm of truth. And Dr. Elijah Carter, respected surgeon, grieving widower, devoted father, was about to become something else entirely: a reckoning. Dad, you need to press charges. Marcus paces his father's kitchen, barely touching his breakfast. It's been 3 days since the incident. 3 days of ice packs and painkillers. 3 days of ignoring calls from the hospital administration asking when Elijah will return to his scheduled surgeries. Elijah sits at the island counter, holding a mug of coffee that's gone cold. The bruise on his cheekbone has bloomed into a palette of purple and yellow. His ribs protest with each breath. The physical pain he can handle, it's the look in Marcus's eyes that cuts deeper. It's not that simple, son. What's not simple?
I had the whole thing on video. They had the wrong car, the wrong license plate, and they beat you anyway.
Marcus's voice cracks. You save lives every day, and they treated you like you were nothing. Elijah sets down his mug. Their brownstone in Roxbury feels too quiet this morning, a sanctuary and a prison all at once. The walls are lined with photographs: Elijah in surgical scrubs, Marcus in basketball uniforms, Jessica's smile preserved in dozens of frozen moments. If I file a complaint, it becomes a battle. The department will close ranks. They'll dig into our lives, find something to discredit us. It could affect your college applications next year. So what? We just let them get away with it, like nothing happened. Marcus slams his hand on the counter. Mom wouldn't let this go. You know she wouldn't. The mention of Jessica hangs in the air between them. Civil rights attorney, community activist, fighter until her last breath. What would she say if she were here? Elijah's phone buzzes. A text from Dr. Vanessa Washington, his colleague and oldest friend. Have you seen the news? Before he can respond, another text follows, a link to the Boston Globe's website. Elijah taps it, and his stomach drops. There on the screen is a still from Marcus's video: Elijah on his knees, blood on his face, officers standing over him. The headline reads: Cureorleg lyb eden duraiga rau time and tirefifi stopi. Marcus, Elijah says slowly, did you share the video? Marcus stops pacing. I sent it to Aiden. Just Aiden. His mom's a reporter at the Globe. Aiden Watkins, Diana Watkins' son. I had to do something, Dad. They hurt you. And you weren't going to do anything about it. Elijah's phone erupts with notifications. Colleagues, friends, his department chair. Then a number he doesn't recognize: Boston Police Department, Internal Affairs Division. The doorbell rings. Then again, more insistent. Elijah moves to the window, peers through the curtains. 3 news vans are parked outside. Reporters stand on his front steps, cameras ready. He turns to Marcus, who looks both defiant and terrified. Well, Elijah says with a resignation that tastes like copper in his mouth, looks like the decision's been made for us. By noon, the video has gone viral. By evening, it's playing on national news. There's something about the footage that cuts through the noise. Perhaps it's the dignified way Elijah narrates his movements, or the shock on Marcus's face, or the clinical precision of the blows. Whatever the reason, Boston is paying attention. America is paying attention. Diana Watkins, the Globe reporter who broke the story, stands outside Boston Police Headquarters as protesters gather, signs bearing Elijah's image and slogans demanding accountability. The department has issued a statement saying officers Brennan and Sullivan have been placed on administrative leave pending investigation. She reports into a camera. But sources within the department tell me this isn't the first complaint against Officer Brennan. In fact, there's a pattern of similar incidents that have been systematically buried. In his Roxbury home, Elijah watches the coverage with a mixture of dread and determination. His phone rings hospital administration again. This time he answers. "Elijah," says Richard Barton, the hospital CEO, "why need to talk strategy? The board's concerned about optics." "Optics?" Elijah repeats, the word bitter on his tongue. "The hospital supports you fully, of course. But we need to contain this. Perhaps a joint statement with the police commissioner. Something conciliatory, focusing on healing and moving forward." Elijah thinks of his patients, of the 3 surgeries scheduled for next week. He thinks of Marcus, watching him from the kitchen doorway, waiting to see if his father will stand up or stand down. And suddenly, he hears Jessica's voice, clear as if she were standing beside him. "Some fights choose you, Eli, and when they do, you better come swinging." "No," Elijah says, surprising himself with the firmness in his voice. "No joint statements. No conciliation. Not yet. Elijah, be reasonable." "I've been reasonable my entire life, Richard. I've been the model doctor, the perfect professional. I've swallowed every microaggression, smiled through every backhanded compliment, mentored every student assigned to me, even when they questioned my credentials. And 3 nights ago, none of that mattered. All they saw was a black man they decided didn't belong in that car, in that neighborhood. This isn't just about you anymore." Barton cautions. "The hospital has relationships with the city, with the police department." "You're right." Elijah interrupts. "It isn't just about me. It's about every patient who looks like me, who comes through our doors and deserves the same care and respect as anyone else. It's about my son, who watched his father bleed on the pavement and now has to carry that image for the rest of his life." Silence on the line. "Then, what are you going to do?" Elijah looks at Marcus, sees Jessica in the determined set of his jaw. "I'm going to tell the truth. All of it." He hangs up, turns to Marcus. "Call Diana Watkins. Tell her I'm ready to talk." As the sun sets over Boston, Dr. Elijah Carter steps onto his front porch to face the cameras. The bruise on his face tells one story. The fire in his eyes tells another. He doesn't know it yet, but across town, in a dimly lit office overlooking the harbor, a phone call is being made. A gravelly voice speaks with quiet authority. "Handle this. Now." The first domino has fallen. The rest will follow, one by one, until the entire structure comes crashing down. But for now, Elijah stands before the microphones, Marcus at his side, and begins to speak his truth. And Boston holds its breath. The morning after Elijah's press conference, Boston Police Commissioner James Raley calls an emergency meeting. The conference room on the top floor of headquarters overlooks the harbor, but no one's admiring the view. The tension is thick enough to slice. "This is a disaster," Raley says, pacing behind his chair. At 63, with silver hair and the build of a former athlete gone to seed, he spent 30 years climbing the ranks. Carter's not some random civilian. He's Boston royalty, chief neurosurgeon, charity board member, friends with half the hospital donors in New England. Deputy Commissioner Victoria Jung watches him with calculating eyes. "The video's bad, Jim. Really bad. Clean-cut doctor, articulate, respectful, getting beaten for essentially nothing." Bren claims Carter resisted arrest. The video shows otherwise. Jung replies coolly, "And now we've got protests forming outside 3 precincts." District Attorney Maxwell Ward leans forward, perfectly tailored suit stretching across broad shoulders. The mayor's office is getting hammered. They want charges filed against Brennan by end of day. Based on what? 3 minutes of viral video. Really stops pacing. We follow procedure. Internal affairs investigation, disciplinary hearing. Then we decide on charges. That might have worked before social media, Jung says, but this isn't going away. Carter's son is all over Instagram. Their family story is trending. The brilliant surgeon whose civil rights attorney wife died of cancer, leaving him a single dad. People are invested. Ward's phone buzzes. He checks it, frowns. Carter's hired legal counsel, Regina Hayes. The room falls silent. Regina Hayes, former prosecutor turned defense attorney, known for taking on police misconduct cases and winning. She doesn't just sue departments, she dismantles them. Jesus. Rayleigh mutters. This isn't just about Brennan anymore, is it? Zhang and Ward exchange glances. What am I missing? Rayleigh demands. Ward clears his throat. Brennan has 6 prior complaints for excessive force, all buried, all involving minority suspects. Wu signed off on burying them. Another uncomfortable silence. Jim, Zhang says carefully, you did, on recommendation from Judge William Sullivan. Sullivan. Rayleigh's face pales. Officer Sullivan's father. Ward nods. The same. And there's more. Deanna Watkins at the Globe is digging into a pattern of similar cases, minorities stopped in upscale neighborhoods, complaints filed, then mysteriously disappearing. Rayleigh sinks into his chair. How deep does this go? We don't know yet, Zhang admits. But Carter isn't just asking for Brennan's badge. His lawyer is requesting all records of complaints against both officers, the department's internal review procedures, and communications between the department and the DA's office regarding complaint dismissals. They're looking for a pattern, Ward says, and if they find it, the unspoken conclusion hangs in the air: careers will end, possibly including everyone in this room. Rayleigh rubs his temples. Options: sacrifice Brennan, Ward suggests. Full prosecution, maximum charges, public mea culpa from the department. Frame it as one bad apple. And Sullivan. Younger, less history, his father's a judge. We say he was following his senior partner's lead. Zhang shakes her head. It won't work. Hayes is too smart for that. She'll keep digging. Then what do you suggest? Rayleigh snaps. We need leverage on Carter, Zhang says plainly. Something to make him back off. Everyone has secret skeletons. Find Carter's. Ward shifts uncomfortably. That's dangerous territory. More dangerous than losing our careers, facing criminal charges ourselves. Zhang challenges. Carter's made this personal. We need to respond in kind. Rayleigh stares out at the harbor for a long moment. Finally, he nods. Do it. Quietly. I want daily reports. As the meeting disperses, Rayleigh remains seated, staring at his reflection in the polished table. 30 years of service, 5 years from retirement, a pension waiting. All potentially destroyed because one of his officers couldn't keep his temper in check. His phone rings, a number he recognizes all too well. Yes, Judge Sullivan, he answers. My son's career is not collateral damage, Jim. The voice on the other end states without preamble. Fix this. Use whatever resources necessary, but Peter stays clean. Understood. Understood. Rayleigh replies automatically. The line goes dead. Rayleigh continues to stare at his reflection, watching as 30 years of integrity crumbles in real time. Across town, in Regina Hayes' downtown office, Elijah sits across from the formidable attorney, Marcus beside him. The office is minimalist, awards and diplomas tastefully arranged, a single photograph of Hayes with former President Obama the only personal touch. They'll come after you, Hayes warns, dark eyes intense behind stylish glasses. At 45, she's built a reputation as relentless, brilliant, and utterly uncompromising, not just legally. They'll dig into your past, your finances, your personal life. Anything to discredit you. I understand, Elijah says. Do you? Hayes leans forward. Because once we file this lawsuit, there's no going back. This won't just be about 2 officers anymore. We'll be challenging systemic practices, potentially involving high-ranking officials. Good, Marcus interjects. They should all be held accountable. Hayes studies the teenager, then turns back to Elijah. Your son's video is compelling evidence, but they'll try to exclude it, claim it's been edited or doesn't show the full context. We need more. Like what? Elijah asks. Other victims. Other officers. Internal documents showing pattern and practice. Hayes taps her pen against a legal pad. Whistleblowers, if we can find them. Elijah's phone buzzes, another text from Vanessa Washington. Hospital board emergency meeting tomorrow. They're nervous, Eli, trading carefully. He shows the message to Hayes, who nods grimly. Expect pressure from all sides. The hospital has contracts with the city, relationships with donors who have political connections. They won't want to be caught in the crossfire. I've worked at Boston Memorial for 15 years, Elijah says. I've brought in millions in research grants, performed surgeries no one else in New England can perform. Surely that counts for something. Chilled, Hayes agrees. But money and power speak louder than loyalty. Be prepared. As if on cue, Elijah's phone rings an unknown number. He answers warily. Dr. Carter, this is Maya Chen from Mayor Santiago's office. The mayor would like to meet with you privately tomorrow morning to discuss the unfortunate incident. Elijah covers the phone, whispers to Hayes. Mayor's office wants a meeting. Hayes's expression hardens. They want to contain this. Sweep it under the rug with promises and platitudes. She takes the phone. This is Regina Hayes, Dr. Carter's attorney. Any meetings will need to include me, and we'll need a detailed agenda beforehand. After finishing the call, Hayes hands the phone back. The game has begun, Dr. Carter. They'll offer sympathy, perhaps a settlement, definitely confidentiality. They'll appeal to your position, your reputation, your concern for your son's future. She fixes him with an unflinching stare. Are you absolutely certain you want to do this? Elijah looks at Marcus, then back at Hayes. My late wife used to say that privilege isn't just about what you have, it's about what you do with it. I've spent my career working within the system, believing that excellence was enough, that if I just performed perfectly, it would somehow change things. He touches the fading bruise on his face. I was wrong. The system doesn't change itself. Hayes nods, a flicker of approval in her eyes. Then let's get to work. As Elijah and Marcus leave Hayes' office, neither notices the black sedan parked across the street, or the man inside photographing them. Neither sees him make a phone call, speaking in low tones. They've hired Hayes. Moving to Phase 2, the next day dawns cloudy, a spring storm brewing over Boston Harbor. At Boston Memorial Hospital, the board of directors convenes in the mahogany, paneled conference room named after a long-dead benefactor. CEO Richard Barton presides at the head of the table, flanked by the hospital's chief legal counsel and the head of public relations. The Carter situation is sensitive. Barton begins, choosing his words carefully. On one hand, Elijah is one of our most valuable assets, brilliant surgeon, incredible track record, beloved by patients and donors alike. On the other hand, his lawsuit against the Boston Police Department puts us in a delicate position. The optics are problematic either way, says Miranda Foster, head of PR. If we publicly support him, we risk alienating city officials and the police department, which could affect everything from ambulance response times to our security contracts. If we distance ourselves, we look like we're abandoning one of our star black physicians after he experienced police brutality. What's he asking of the hospital? Asks Dr. Lawrence Chen, chief of surgery. Nothing, officially, Barton replies. He's scheduled to return to surgery next week. But his case is becoming a movement. There were students demonstrating outside the medical school yesterday with signs that said, "White coats for Black lives" and "Justice for Dr. Carter." This isn't just about public relations. Interjects Dr. Vanessa Washington, one of 3 black physicians on the board. This is about one of our colleagues being assaulted for no reason. About his 16-year-old son witnessing it. About the fact that Elijah could have been any one of us who happened to be black or brown. No one is disputing the injustice. Barton says soothingly. The question is how the hospital positions itself. There shouldn't be a question. Washington counters, voice rising. Boston Memorial should stand unequivocally with Dr. Carter. Anything less sends a message to every minority physician, nurse, and patient that we only value them until it becomes inconvenient. The room falls silent. Then Chen speaks, measured and deliberate. Digara. Washington is right. This isn't just about Carter. It's about what we stand for as an institution. Before anyone can respond, Barton's assistant enters, whispers something in his ear. His expression darkens. "Excuse me," he says, standing abruptly. "I need to take this." In the hallway, Barton accepts a phone call from a block number. "Mr. Barton," says a familiar voice, Judge William Sullivan. "I understand you're in a difficult position regarding Dr. Carter." Judge Sullivan. Barton stammers, surprised. "Yes, it's a complex situation. Let me simplify it for you." Sullivan interrupts. 3 members of your board serve on my wife's charitable foundation. Your hospital receives $8 million annually in city grants that require approval from committees I influence. Your personal application to the Commonwealth Club, which has been pending for some time, could benefit from a favorable word. Barton's mouth goes dry. What exactly are you suggesting? I'm suggesting that while Dr. Carter is an asset to your hospital, his current crusade is a liability. One that could affect funding, relationships, personal opportunities. I can't fire him, Barton protests. He has tenure. And the publicity would be devastating. No one said anything about firing, Sullivan says smoothly. But there are ways to make a workplace less comfortable. Research funding redirected. Surgical schedules adjusted. Committee assignments reconsidered. I trust you can manage these subtleties. That's a lot to risk based on one incident. Barton hedges. Sullivan's tone hardens. This is bigger than one incident, Mr. Barton. Much bigger. Choose your side carefully. The line goes dead, leaving Barton staring at his phone, a cold weight settling in his stomach. He returns to the boardroom, where discussion has continued in his absence. We should issue a statement of full support, Washington is saying. Make it clear that Boston Memorial stands with Dr. Carter unequivocally. Barton clears his throat. I think we need to be more nuanced in our approach. Perhaps a statement acknowledging the incident without explicitly taking sides. Express concern for Dr. Carter's well-being, confidence in the legal process. Washington stares at him incredulously. Richard, what happened in the hallway? You were almost with us before that call. Nothing happened. Barton says too quickly. I'm just considering all perspectives. Whose perspective? Washington demands. Because it sounds like you're suddenly considering perspectives that aren't even in this room. The tension crackles. Board members shift uncomfortably. Let's draft two statements. Barton suggests, deflecting. One more supportive, one more neutral. We can reconvene tomorrow to decide. As the meeting adjourns, Washington pulls Chen aside. Something's not right. Barton was ready to support Elijah, then takes a mysterious call and completely flips. Chen nods. Someone's applying pressure. Why need to warn Elijah? Washington says. Whatever's happening, it's bigger than we thought. Meanwhile, at City Hall, Elijah and Hayes sit across from Mayor Elena Santiago and her chief of staff. The mayor, a savvy politician with aspirations beyond Boston, maintains a practiced expression of concern. Dr. Carter, first, let me say how deeply troubled I am by what happened to you. It's unacceptable, and I've personally directed Commissioner Raley to ensure a thorough investigation. Thank you, Mayor Santiago. Elijah replies, hyper-aware of Hayes's warning to reveal nothing. I appreciate your concern. I believe there's a path forward that addresses your grievances while also respecting the challenges our police department faces. Santiago continues. A settlement from the city, disciplinary action for the officers involved, and perhaps a role for you on a new commission on police, community relations. Hayes's expression remains neutral. My client appreciates the offer, Mayor Santiago. However, we're not interested in financial settlement at this time. We're seeking structural change, complete transparency regarding all excessive force complaints over the past decade, independent review of all dismissed complaints, and criminal charges against both officers. Santiago's smile tightens. Ms. Hayes, while I understand your position, those demands go far beyond addressing this single incident. Because this wasn't a single incident. Elijah interjects. This was one moment in a pattern that's been ignored for years. How many others didn't have a son recording? How many didn't have my credentials or connections? Dr. Carter. Santiago says, leaning forward, I respect your passion. But consider the broader implications. Boston has made tremendous progress in police, community relations. A protracted legal battle could set us back years. Not to mention the impact on your career, your son's well-being. The implied threat hangs in the air. Hayes stands. I believe we're done here, Mayor Santiago. If the city wishes to continue discussions, you can direct your counsel to contact me directly. As they leave City Hall, Elijah feels eyes following them. That was a threat, wasn't it? It was, Hayes confirms, and not a particularly subtle one. She checks her watch. I have a source meeting me in an hour. Former internal affairs officer who reached out after seeing your story, says he has information about how complaints against certain officers get buried. I should get to the hospital, Elijah says. I've been away too long already. Be careful, Hayes warns. Watch for changes in how you're treated. Document everything. What neither of them notices is the same black sedan from the previous day, still following at a discreet distance. Inside, the driver makes another call, target leaving City Hall now, heading toward hospital. Appeared unresponsive to Mayor's offer. Stay on him, instructs the voice on the other end. And get me everything on Hayes. Everything. By the time Elijah reaches Boston Memorial, the storm has broken. Rain lashes against the windows of the neurosurgery department, where Elijah finds an unexpected scene. His residents and fellows gathered in the conference room, looking up as he enters. Dr. Carter, one of the senior residents, says, stepping forward, "We heard you were coming in today. We wanted you to know. We're with you." Elijah takes in their faces diverse, determined, united. Something tightens in his chest. "Thank you," he says simply. "The administration sent an email this morning," continues the resident. "Said we shouldn't discuss your case with patients or press. But we wanted you to know they don't speak for us." Before Elijah can respond, his phone buzzes with a text from Washington. "Need to talk. Meet me in the research wing. Alone." 15 minutes later, in the quiet of a research lab, Washington fills him in on the strange board meeting, Barton's mysterious call, the sudden shift in position. Someone got to him early. Someone with enough power to make the CEO of a major hospital change course mid-meeting. Elijah absorbs this, connecting dots. The mayor tried to pressure me too. Offered a settlement, a ceremonial position, implied there could be consequences to refusing. This is bigger than two overzealous cops, Washington concludes. Someone's pulling strings, and they're desperate to shut this down quickly. But who has that kind of reach? Over the hospital, the mayor's office, the police department. Washington hesitates. "I've been asking around." One name keeps coming up: Judge William Sullivan. Sullivan, as in Officer Sullivan's father. The same. He's been on the bench for 20 years, heads the Judicial Appointment Committee, sits on half a dozen powerful boards, and he's Commissioner Rayleigh's former partner from their patrol days. Elijah sits heavily on a lab stool. So the officer who helped assault me is the son of a judge who controls the commissioner who oversees the department that's supposedly investigating the assault. Exactly. Washington confirms grimly, and Sullivan's tentacles reach everywhere: hospital donors, city contracts, political endorsements. That explains why the complaints against Brennan disappeared, and why everyone's so desperate to make this go away. Elijah rubs his face, wincing as his fingers brush the fading bruise. They're not just protecting two officers, they're protecting a whole system. What are you going to do? Elijah's phone buzzes. A text from Hayes' source came through. "Big, call me immediately." He looks up at Washington. What Jessica would have done: follow the truth wherever it leads. As Elijah leaves the hospital that evening, the black sedan continues its surveillance. But now, a second vehicle joins the watch, this one containing Diana Watkins from the Boston Globe, who's developed sources of her own. The storm continues to rage over Boston, lightning illuminating the skyline in stark flashes. The perfect backdrop for the battle that's about to escalate from a single incident into an exposure that will shake the city's foundations. Because while Judge Sullivan, Commissioner Rayleigh, and Mayor Santiago believe they're containing a problem, they've missed something crucial. Dr. Elijah Carter didn't just save lives in the operating room. For 15 years, he's been meticulously documenting every microaggression, every suspicious traffic stop, every random security check at the hospital, and he's about to use that evidence to perform the most important surgery of his career, excising the cancer of corruption from the very heart of Boston's power structure. The storm is just beginning. The next morning, Boston awakens to headlines that send shockwaves through the city's corridors of power. Pioli isatimulai bio omar elegias iswastimentakova, OPO from Misko Diani Aminsaiti Kemampia Watkins's front page expose in the Globe details allegations from former Internal Affairs Officer Thomas Mercer, who claims complaints against certain officers, particularly those with connections to Judge William Sullivan, were routinely buried, evidence tampered with, and witnesses intimidated. Accompanying the story is a database of 47 excessive force complaints filed against officers in the past 5 years, all dismissed without investigation, all involving minority civilians, and all bearing the same signature on the dismissal forms, Commissioner James Rayleigh. By 9 a.m., protesters have surrounded police headquarters. By noon, the mayor has called for an independent investigation. By 3 p.m., Judge Sullivan has issued a statement denouncing the defamatory insinuations against his character and threatening legal action against the Globe. And at 4 p.m., Regina Hayes holds a press conference on the steps of the courthouse, Elijah standing resolute beside her. Today, we're filing a federal civil rights lawsuit. Hayes announces to a forest of microphones. Not just against Officers Brennan and Sullivan, but against Commissioner Rayleigh, Judge William Sullivan, and the City of Boston. We allege a pattern and practice of discriminatory policing, systematic concealment of misconduct, and abuse of judicial authority. A reporter shouts, "Dr. Carter, are you prepared for the backlash this will cause?" Elijah steps forward, the fading bruise on his face still visible. "I've spent my career healing people. Now it's time to heal a broken system. This lawsuit isn't just about what happened to me. It's about every person who didn't have a video, didn't have access to a powerful attorney, didn't have a platform to speak. It's about ensuring that law enforcement serves and protects everyone, regardless of their skin color or zip code." As Elijah speaks, cameras capture Marcus standing tall behind him, no longer the terrified teenager from the traffic stop video, but a young man finding his voice in the storm. "My mother taught me that silence in the face of injustice is complicity." Elijah continues, "I will not be complicit, not anymore, and I call on every person of conscience in Boston to join us in demanding transparency, accountability, and real change." The crowd erupts in applause. From her position near the courthouse steps, Diana Watkins makes notes on her phone, already planning tomorrow's follow-up story. And across the street, in a darkened SUV with tinted windows, Commissioner Rayleigh watches the scene unfold with growing dread. "This has gone too far," he mutters into his phone. "Sullivan's kid should never have been on patrol in that neighborhood. Brennan's history should have had him on desk duty years ago. We need to contain this. It's too late for containment," responds Judge Sullivan, voice ice cold through the speaker. "Now it's about survival. Meet me at the club in an hour." And James, "Come alone." Back at Boston Memorial, the hospital administration has called another emergency board meeting. This time, Dr. Vanessa Washington arrives prepared. Before CO Barton can even begin his remarks, she places a folder in front of each board member. "What's this?" Barton asks, flipping open his copy. "Evidence," Washington replies. 15 years of incident reports filed by minority doctors at this hospital, describing prejudicial treatment by security staff overseen by the same private firm that trains Boston PD officers, reports that were consistently ignored or dismissed as misunderstandings. She locks eyes with Barton. "Reports that I personally brought to your attention multiple times." The room falls silent as board members leaf through the documents, expressions shifting from confusion to shock to shame. "There's more," Washington continues. Page 12 details 3 instances where our own hospital security detained black visitors attempting to see family members in the ICU, claiming they didn't look like family. Page 20 shows the disparity in security response times between our Roxbury clinic and our Beacon Hill location. "This is troubling," Barton admits. "But what does it have to do with Dr. Carter's current situation?" Washington's gaze hardens. "Everything. Because the same system that allowed officers to attack Elijah exists within these walls. The same impulse to protect institutions rather than people. The same willingness to silence those who speak up." She stands, commanding the room. Boston Memorial has 2 choices. We can stand with Dr. Carter and commit to real institutional change, or we can become part of the problem he's fighting against. And if we choose the latter, I will personally ensure that every document in that folder reaches Diana Watkins by morning. In the tense silence that follows, Dr. Chen clears his throat. "I believe Dr. Washington has made our path clear. We either lead on this issue or will be forced to follow." One by one, board members nod in agreement. Barton, outmaneuvered and exposed, has no choice but to concede. "Draft a statement of full support for Dr. Carter," he instructs the PR director, "and prepare a comprehensive review of our security protocols and incident reporting procedures." Washington exchanges a subtle nod with Chen. Round one to the truth. Meanwhile, at the exclusive Commonwealth Club, where Boston's power brokers have networked over brandy and cigars for generations, Judge Sullivan and Commissioner Rayleigh meet in a private room. Both men have aged years in days, their usual confidence replaced by a desperate edge. Hayes is Mercer, Sullivan says without preamble, and if he talked, others will follow. We should offer Carter a settlement. Really suggests something substantial enough that it's beyond settlements now. Sullivan interrupts. They're not after money. They're after the system, our system. Then what do we do? Sullivan sips his scotch, eyes cold. Discredit him. Everyone has vulnerabilities. Find Carter's. We've been digging. His record is clean. Impeccable surgeon, respected researcher, devoted father. Really shakes his head. The only potential angle was his late wife's activism work, but attacking a cancer victim's memory would backfire spectacularly. Everyone has secrets. Sullivan insists. The son, then. Teenagers always have something to hide. Drugs, girls, questionable online behavior. Find it. Really shifts uncomfortably. Using a minor to get to his father. That's crossing a line, Bill. We'll cross the line the moment my son and Brennan put their hands on Carter. Sullivan snaps. Now it's about survival. He leans forward. My sources at the hospital say Carter's research grants are up for renewal next month. $8 million in federal funding that requires institutional support. And perhaps Boston Memorial reconsiders whether Carter's work remains a priority. Perhaps his surgical schedule faces unfortunate conflicts. Nothing overt, nothing actionable. Just the subtle withdrawal of institutional backing until he gets the message. Really drains his glass. And if he doesn't back down, Sullivan's expression hardens. Then we make it clear this isn't just about his career anymore. The threat hangs in the air between them, neither man willing to articulate exactly what it means, but both understanding the depths to which they're now willing to sink. Across town, in the more modest surroundings of Regina Hayes' law office, a different kind of strategy session unfolds. Hayes, Elijah, Marcus, Diana Watkins, and Thomas Mercer, the whistleblower former internal affairs officer, review evidence spread across a conference table. Mercer's testimony gives us the framework. Hayes explains, but we need documentation. Records showing which complaints were buried, who gave the orders, who benefited. Most of those records have been altered or destroyed, Mercer says, rubbing his thinning gray hair. The former Marine carries himself with rigid posture, even in civilian clothes, his conscience finally outweighing his loyalty to the badge. That's standard procedure when burying complaints. Digital records edited, physical copies shredded. But you kept copies. Deanna prompts. That's what you told me. Mercer nods reluctantly. Some. I started noticing patterns 5 years ago. Certain officers seemed untouchable, no matter what they did, especially if they had connections to Judge Sullivan. I began making personal backups before filing official reports. He pulls a flash drive from his pocket. It's not complete, but it's enough to establish a pattern. Hayes takes the drive. This is crucial, Mr. Mercer. But you understand that coming forward puts you at significant risk. Your pension, your reputation. My son is Marcus's age, Mercer says simply. If he were treated the way Dr. Carter was, I'd want someone to speak up. Elijah extends his hand, which Mercer shakes firmly. Thank you. Deanna studies her notes. My sources say Sullivan and Rayleigh met at the Commonwealth Club today. Whatever they're planning, they're escalating. So are we. Hayes says, turning to Elijah. We need to build public momentum. Get more victims to come forward. Create so much pressure that they can't make this disappear. I've been thinking about that. Elijah says. What if we created a platform, a website where people could anonymously submit their experiences with police misconduct? Build a crowdsourced database too big to ignore. That could work. Diana agrees. The Globe could help amplify it. And I could coordinate with medical students. Marcus adds. Get them to spread the word on campus, social media. Hayes smiles, her first of the day. Good. But be prepared. The more effective we are, the harder they'll push back. They've likely been investigating all of us, looking for pressure points. Let them look. Elijah says with quiet determination. My wife fought for justice her entire career. Now it's my turn. The meeting continues late into the night, a small group of determined individuals plotting against a system built to withstand challenges. What they don't know, can't know, is that their conversation is being recorded, their strategies already flowing back to Sullivan and Reilly, who are mobilizing resources of their own. The next morning, Elijah arrives at the hospital to find his administrative assistant in tears. "Dr. Carter," she says, voice shaking, "they've cancelled your surgeries for the next 2 weeks. All of them. The patients have been reassigned to other surgeons. Who authorized this?" Elijah demands. "Dr. Whitman, the new deputy chief of surgery. He said it was to allow you time to deal with personal matters." Elijah's jaw tightens. He's never heard of any Dr. Whitman being appointed as his deputy. His phone buzzes, Washington calling. "Uli, have you checked your email? The research committee just voted to relocate your NH grant funds. They're claiming your current distractions put the project timeline at risk. They can't do that." Elijah protests. "That grant was awarded to me specifically, based on my research protocol. Technically, the hospital administers the grant," Washington explains. "They're within their rights to reassign it if they can argue you're unable to fulfill the obligations. It's a stretch, but legally defensible." Elijah's grip tightens on his phone. "This is them, isn't it? Sullivan, Reilly. Has to be. Barton was ready to support you yesterday after our board meeting. Something changed overnight." Before Elijah can respond, he receives another call, Marcus's school principal. "Dr. Carter, I'm calling about Marcus. There's been an incident. I need you to come to the school immediately." Elijah's blood runs cold. "Is Marcus hurt?" "No, but it's serious, very serious. Police are involved." The systematic dismantling of Elijah's life has begun, just as Sullivan promised. By the time Elijah reaches the prestigious private school Marcus attends on scholarship, a crowd has gathered. Parents whisper, students record with phones, and 2 police cruisers sit prominently in the circular driveway. Inside the principal's office, Marcus sits stone-faced, flanked by 2 officers, one of whom, Elijah notes with grim recognition, works under Commissioner Reilly's direct command, Dr. Carter. Principal Hammond begins, unable to meet Elijah's eyes. "I'm afraid we've discovered something disturbing in Marcus's locker during a random search." Officer Reed can explain. Reed, mid-40s, with the blank expression of a man following unpleasant orders, places an evidence bag on the desk. Inside, a small bag of white powder and a prescription bottle with the label partially torn off. "We found these items in your son's locker approximately 1 hour ago," Reed states. The powder appears to be cocaine. The pills are Adderall prescribed to another student. "That's not mine," Marcus says immediately. "Dad, I swear." "You don't have to say anything else, Marcus." Elijah interrupts, years of hospital bureaucracy making him hyper-aware of the legal trap being laid. "We'll discuss this with our attorney present." "Dr. Carter," Principal Hammond says, "given the seriousness of these accusations and the school's zero-tolerance policy, I have no choice but to suspend Marcus pending a full investigation, and will need to take him down to the station for processing." Reed adds, "Standard procedure for possession with intent to distribute." "Intent to?" Elijah begins, incredulous, before catching himself. "Officer Reed, my son is 16 years old with no prior disciplinary record." He maintains his innocence. "And these substances were found during a random search just days after I filed a lawsuit against your department. Surely you can understand why this appears targeted." Reed's expression doesn't change. "Just following procedure, sir. My son isn't going anywhere without our attorney present." Elijah states firmly, "And I'm certain she'll be very interested in the timing and circumstances of this random search." Elijah pulls out his phone, calls Hayes, quickly explains the situation. "Stall them," Hayes instructs. "I'll be there in 20 minutes with a juvenile defense attorney. Don't let them question Marcus or take him anywhere." For the next excruciating 17 minutes, Elijah engages in a battle of wills with Reed and Hammond, refusing to allow Marcus to be taken while waiting for Hayes. The tension in the room could be cut with a scalpel. When Hayes finally bursts in, accompanied by a sharp-eyed woman she introduces as Sarah Diaz, specialist in juvenile defense, the dynamic shifts immediately. "Officers," Hayes begins, "I represent Dr. Carter in a federal civil rights lawsuit against the Boston Police Department. Ms. Diaz represents Marcus Carter. We believe these charges are retaliatory and the evidence planted." Reed bristles. "That's a serious accusation, counselor." "Yes, it is." Hayes agrees coolly. "Just as serious as the fact that you personally report to Commissioner Raley, who is named in our lawsuit. Just as serious as the fact that this random search targeted only my client's son, just days after we filed." Diaz steps forward. "My client will not be going to any police station today. If you wish to pursue these charges, you can file them formally, at which point we will demand a full investigation into the chain of custody of this evidence, the authorization for the search, and any communications between the Boston PD and school administration regarding Marcus Carter." Something flickers in Reed's eyes, uncertainty, perhaps even guilt. He exchanges glances with his partner. "We'll be in touch," he says finally, gathering the evidence bag. After the officers leave, Hammond clears his throat awkwardly. The suspension still stands, pending. The suspension does not stand. Diaz interrupts. "Not unless you want a lawsuit for targeted harassment and violation of due process." Marcus returns to class tomorrow. When they finally exit the building, Marcus breaks his stoic facade. "Dad, I swear I never." "I know," Elijah says, pulling his son into a tight embrace. "I know." Hayes watches the officers drive away, her expression thunderous. This is their playbook. They couldn't get to you directly, so they went after Marcus. Classic intimidation tactic. They're trying to send a message. Elijah realizes. My surgery's cancelled, my research funding threatened. Now this, they're showing how much power they have. Yes, Hayes agrees, but they've made a critical mistake. What's that? They've left evidence. The order for that random search came from somewhere. The drugs had to be planted by someone, and Officer Reed's presence, specifically Rayleigh's man, creates a direct link back to the commissioner. Diaz nods in agreement. We can use this. Show it's part of a pattern of retaliation. Marcus, still shaken but resolute, looks between the adults. So what do we do now? Hayes' smile is razor sharp. We spring the trap. Right back on them. That night, as Boston sleeps, Diana Watkins's latest story hits the Globe's website, with a headline that makes Judge Sullivan's blood run cold when he sees it the next morning. POIC. The story details Marcus's ordeal, connecting it explicitly to Elijah's lawsuit and featuring quotes from multiple students who witnessed the suspicious, random search that targeted only one locker. It questions how officers reporting directly to Commissioner Rayleigh happened to be present for a routine school disciplinary matter, and notes the curious timing just hours after Boston Memorial Hospital mysteriously reassigned Dr. Carter's research funding. By morning, the story has gone national. By afternoon, 3 more officers have contacted Hayes, ready to corroborate Mercer's account of systemic cover-ups. And by evening, theft justice for Carter's is trending nationwide. Sullivan and Rayleigh's attempt to intimidate has backfired spectacularly, turning a local controversy into a national movement. But cornered men are dangerous men, and as Elijah tucks an exhausted Marcus into bed that night, he can't shake the feeling that their opponent's next move will be even more desperate and potentially deadly. Because systems don't die quietly, they lash out. And the storm hasn't reached its peak. For 3 days, Boston feels like a city holding its breath. The planted evidence scandal has created a spotlight too bright for even the most powerful to operate openly. Mayor Santiago has publicly called for Commissioner Rayleigh's resignation. The school board has placed Principal Hammond on administrative leave. Judge Sullivan has recused himself from all cases involving the Boston Police Department, citing appearance of conflict, while denying any wrongdoing. On the surface, it looks like momentum is shifting, but Elijah Hayes and their growing coalition of allies know better. The quiet isn't surrender, it's recalculation. They're regrouping. Hayes tells Elijah and Marcus during a strategy session in her office, now swept daily for surveillance devices. Sullivan has too much to lose. People like him don't just concede. The website is getting hundreds of submissions. Diana reports, scrolling through her laptop. People sharing their own experiences with police misconduct. We've verified over 50 that follow the exact pattern Mercer described, complaints filed, then mysteriously dropped. And the hospital's gone silent, Elijah adds. No communication about my surgeries, my research, nothing. Just cold shoulder treatment from administration. Hayes taps her pen against her legal pad. They're waiting for the attention to die down. News cycles move fast, another crisis will hit. The cameras will turn, and they'll start applying pressure again, more subtly this time. So we don't let the attention die down, Marcus suggests. He's changed in recent weeks, shock and fear hardening into determination. We keep the story alive. Exactly, Hayes agrees. But we need to go bigger. It's time to play our strongest card. She turns to Mercer, who's been quietly reviewing documents in the corner. You said certain officers were untouchable. If they had connections to Sullivan, I need names, dates, specific incidents. Mercer hesitates. Some of those officers are still on the force, still in positions of power. That's the point, Hayes says firmly. This isn't just about Brennan and Sullivan anymore. This is about exposing the entire network. After a moment's consideration, Mercer nods. There were 5 officers in particular, all mentored by Sullivan when he was still on the force. All rose through the ranks unusually quickly. All had multiple complaints that disappeared. He slides a folder across the table. Everything I have is in here. Hayes opens the folder, eyes widening as she scans the contents. This is extensive. Sullivan created a system, Mercer explains. Officers loyal to him got protection, promotions, choice assignments. In return, they enforced his version of order in the city, targeting certain neighborhoods, certain demographics, making problems disappear for powerful people, ensuring the right businesses got protection while others faced constant code violations. A shadow police force, Deanna murmurs, already formulating headlines. Not just police, Mercer continues. Judges, prosecutors, city officials. Sullivan placed his people strategically throughout the system. Elijah leans forward. How deep does this go? Mercer's expression is grim. All the way to the federal level. Why do you think no previous investigations ever stuck? Sullivan has friends in the U.S. Attorney's Office, connections at the FBI field office. The room falls silent as the magnitude of what they're facing sinks in. Finally, Hayes speaks. We need to build an airtight case, something so comprehensive, so publicly visible, that even Sullivan's federal connections can't bury it. She turns to Deanna. How quickly can you publish? For something this explosive, I'll need at least a week for fact checking, getting statements, running it past legal. Maybe longer. Why may not have a week? Elijah says, checking his phone. I just got a text from Vanessa. The hospital board has called an emergency session tomorrow morning to review my privileges. They can't seriously be considering revoking your surgical privileges. Hayes says incredulously. You're their star neurosurgeon. They're sending a message, Elijah says, showing me how much I have to lose. Marcus looks at his father, concern etched on his young face. Dad, maybe we should. No, Elijah interrupts gently. We don't back down. Not now. Your mother would never forgive us. He turns back to the group. We need to accelerate the timeline. I'll speak at the board meeting tomorrow. Make it clear that any action against me will only strengthen our case for retaliation. Diana, publish what you can verify quickly, then follow up with the deeper connections. And Hayes, yes. It's time to formally request a Department of Justice investigation. Sullivan may have friends there, but a public request backed by the evidence we've gathered will force some action. Hayes nods. I'll draft the request tonight. As the meeting concludes, Elijah and Marcus prepare to leave, both exhausted from weeks of constant vigilance and stress. Dad, Marcus says quietly as they walk to their car, now parked in the secure garage beneath Hayes's building after their home address was leaked online. Do you ever wish you had just let it go? After that night, Elijah stops, turns to face his son. In the harsh fluorescent lighting of the garage, he looks older, the lines around his eyes deeper, but his gaze is unwavering. Every system has a breaking point, Marcus. A moment when turning away becomes more costly than standing firm. For me, it wasn't when Officer Brennan struck me. It was when I saw the look in your eyes afterward. The realization that in that moment, All my accomplishments, all my careful rule following, all my respectability meant nothing. He places his hands on Marcus's shoulders. I couldn't let you grow up believing that's just how the world works. That some injustices must be accepted. Your mother never accepted injustice, and neither will we. Marcus nods, blinking back unexpected tears. I'm scared sometimes, but I'm proud of you. Mom would be too. They embrace briefly, then continue to their car, unaware that this conversation, like so many others, has been observed. Not by Sullivan's people this time, but by someone else entirely. Someone who has been watching the Carter family's fight with growing interest and has finally decided it's time to get involved. Someone who has nothing left to lose. The next morning, as Elijah prepares to face the hospital board, his phone rings an unknown number. Dr. Carter, says a woman's voice he doesn't recognize. My name is Angela Brennan. Officer Michael Brennan's wife. We need to talk. The board meeting never happens. At least not as planned, because when Elijah arrives at Boston Memorial, accompanied by Hayes and Washington, he finds the boardroom in chaos. Board members huddle in small groups, whispering urgently. CEO Barton paces, ashen-faced, barking into his phone. What's happening? Elijah asks Washington. Before she can answer, Barton spots them and approaches, his usual smooth demeanor shattered. Did you know about this? He demands, thrusting his tablet at Elijah. On the screen, a Boston Globe exclusive, published 30 minutes ago. The headline makes Elijah's breath catch. Ofahaif Rofi Raels Dikadias of Palef Parawi Puiam. Geodges Kalentu Oral Ovia Deepamati. The story details Angela Brennan's account of her husband's rise through the ranks under Sullivan's patronage, the special assignments that paid cash bonuses, the explicit instructions about which neighborhoods to target and which complaints to ignore. It describes a system of policing designed not to protect and serve, but to maintain a specific social order benefiting Sullivan's network of allies. Most damning of all, it includes scanned documents, performance reviews, bank statements, text messages supporting every allegation. I had no idea, Elijah says honestly. This is the first I'm seeing this. Barton studies him skeptically. The timing is remarkably convenient. Richard. Washington interjects. Regardless of the timing, these allegations are explosive. If even half of them are true, the hospital needs to be on the right side of this. Hayes steps forward. Mr. Barton, I understand this meeting was called to discuss Dr. Carter's privileges. Given these new developments, I trust that matter is now closed. Barton looks from Hayes to Washington to Elijah, calculating rapidly. Finally, he nods curtly. The board will need to reassess in light of this new information. For now, the review is postponed. As Barton walks away, Elijah checks his phone, finding a text from Diana. Angela Brennan contacted me directly. Couldn't risk telling you in advance. She has everything: names, dates, account numbers. This breaks the case wide open. What made her come forward? Elijah wonders aloud. He gets his answer that afternoon, when he and Hayes meet Angela Brennan in a quiet cafe outside the city. She's younger than Elijah expected, early 30s, with tired eyes and nervous hands that constantly rearrange her coffee cup. Michael didn't tell me what happened that night. She begins without preamble. Not the truth, anyway. He said there was a situation with a combative suspect, that things escalated. Standard police language for covering up excessive force. She takes a shaky breath. Then I saw the video, saw what he did to you, to your son. What they made him become. Made him. Hayes questions. Angela's eyes harden. My husband wasn't always like this. When we met 8 years ago, he wanted to help people. Then he got partnered with Peter Sullivan, the judge's son. Started getting mentored by Sullivan's circle. They changed him, trained him to see threats everywhere, to view certain people as automatically suspicious. Why come forward now? Elijah asks gently. 2 reasons, Angela replies. First, they're planning to make Michael the scapegoat. I overheard a phone call. They'll offer him up, claim he acted alone, protect Sullivan and the others. Second, her voice breaks slightly. I'm pregnant, due in September. I don't want my child growing up in a family built on corruption and brutality. Hayes leans forward. Ms. Brennan, your testimony, combined with these documents, could be transformative, but you understand the risks. Your husband could face serious charges. Yes, Angela says simply. And he should. What he did to you, Dr. Carter, what he's done to others, it's indefensible. But so is the system that shaped him, rewarded him, used him. As Angela shares more details, the monthly meetings at Sullivan's house where assignments were distributed, the coded language used to identify problem individuals, the parallel system of compensation for special duties, Elijah feels a complex mix of emotions. Anger at what was done to him and Marcus, yes, but also a surgeon's clinical satisfaction at finally seeing the full pathology of the disease they're fighting. By the time they part ways, with promises to keep Angela's location secure, the story has exploded nationally. The mayor has requested federal intervention. The governor has announced the formation of an independent commission. Even Sullivan's allies are distancing themselves, the survival instinct of political animals sensing a shifting tide. That evening, as Elijah and Marcus watch the coverage from the safety of a hotel suite arranged by Hayes, Marcus asks the question that's been hovering unspoken. Is it over? Elijah considers choosing his words carefully. Not over. But the balance has shifted. What was hidden is now visible, and visibility creates the possibility of change. His phone buzzes, a text from Hayes, Doge officially opening investigation. Press conference tomorrow. They want you there. As Elijah shows Marcus the message, a sense of cautious hope begins to emerge. Not the naive hope of quick resolution or easy justice, but the hard-earned hope of those who have glimpsed the full scope of a broken system and still choose to believe it can be rebuilt. What they don't yet realize is that across town, in the elegant study of his Beacon Hill home, Judge William Sullivan is making one final call to the last ally he believes can still save him. The response he receives is not what he expected. "I'm sorry, Bill. You're on your own." The words echo in Sullivan's empty study as the call disconnects. For the first time in 30 years, the judge finds himself without protection, without leverage, without options. Sullivan opens his desk drawer, removes a small revolver, and places it beside the glass of scotch on his blotter. Then he begins to write, his fountain pen scratching across monogrammed stationery. His final ruling. The next morning, Boston awakens to news that sends seismic waves through the city's power structure. Judge William Sullivan, found dead in his study, an apparent suicide. Beside his body, a confession 20 pages long, naming names, detailing operations, exposing a web of corruption that extends far beyond what even Angela Brennan revealed. It's as if, in his final act, Sullivan decided that if he could not survive, neither would the system he had so meticulously constructed. The confession, immediately seized by federal agents, will eventually lead to indictments against 27 police officers, 5 judges, 3 prosecutors, and numerous city officials. Commissioner Raley will resign before being indicted on multiple federal charges. Officer Peter Sullivan will turn state's evidence against his former colleagues. Officer Brennan will plead guilty to reduced charges in exchange for his testimony. But that will come later. For now, on this crisp spring morning, Elijah and Marcus Carter stand together on the steps of the federal courthouse, surrounded by journalists, activists, and citizens drawn to witness a moment of reckoning. Elijah approaches the microphones, Marcus at his side. The bruise on his face has faded, but the determination in his eyes has only strengthened. "I am a surgeon," he begins, his voice steady and clear. "I have spent my life learning to diagnose illness, to trace symptoms back to their cause, to remove what is damaged so that healing can begin. What happened to my son and me that night was a symptom of a deeper disease, a cancer of corruption and systemic racism that has been growing for decades." He gestures to the crowd, to the city beyond. This is not a moment for celebration. A man has died. Families will be torn apart by the revelations and prosecutions to come. Trust in vital institutions has been severely damaged. But it is a moment for truth, for accountability, for beginning the long process of healing. Marcus steps forward, no longer the frightened teenager from the viral video, but a young man finding his voice. "My mom used to say that justice isn't just about punishment. It's about restoration, about creating systems that work for everyone, that protect everyone." Elijah places a hand on his son's shoulder, pride evident in his face. The road ahead is long. Dismantling entrenched corruption doesn't happen overnight, Rebuilding trust takes even longer. But today we begin, not just for ourselves, but for everyone who has been silenced, everyone who has been told that injustice is just the way things are. As they step away from the microphones, a reporter calls out,
Dr. Carter!
"Will you go back to surgery now?" Elijah pauses, considers. "Yes, that's my calling, my purpose. But I've learned something important these past weeks. Being a healer isn't just about what I do in the operating room. Sometimes, healing requires exposing what's broken in our communities, our institutions, our systems of justice." Another question, and the foundation announced yesterday, the Jessica Carter Institute for Justice. A smile touches Elijah's face, the first genuine one in weeks. "My late wife spent her career fighting for those who couldn't fight for themselves. The Institute will continue that work, focusing specifically on accountability in law enforcement and the judiciary. Marcus will help shape its direction as he grows into his own voice." The questions continue, but Elijah and Marcus move through the crowd toward the future they've chosen, a future that honors Jessica's legacy, while forging their own path forward. Behind them, Boston begins the painful process of accountability. Before them, the uncertain but necessary journey of healing and reform. Around them, a movement sparked by one night of injustice, fueled by courage, sustained by truth. And within them, the knowledge that change real. Structural change begins with willing to stand firm, when the easier path would be to stand down. Dr. Elijah Carter, healer of bodies, had become something more, a healer of systems. And in doing so, he had taught his son, his city, and his country the most important lesson of all: justice, like healing, requires diagnosis, intervention, and sometimes surgical precision to remove what has decayed beyond repair. The storm had passed. The rebuilding could begin. Epilogue. 1 year later, Marcus Carter adjusts his tie in the mirror, a gesture so reminiscent of his father that Elijah, watching from the doorway, feels a momentary ache of both pride and nostalgia. "Ready?" Elijah asks. Marcus nods, 18 now, taller, shoulders broader, eyes carrying a wisdom beyond his years. "As ready as I'll ever be." Today marks the dedication of the Jessica Carter Institute for Justice, housed in a renovated brownstone in Roxbury. Outside, a modest crowd has gathered: community members, activists, journalists, and some faces not seen in public for months. Angela Brennan with her infant daughter, Thomas Mercer, now teaching ethics at the police academy, Regina Hayes, recently appointed to head the Police Oversight Commission, Diana Watkins, wearing the Pulitzer Prize, pin awarded for her coverage of the Sullivan case. Elijah and Marcus make their way downstairs. The main hall of the Institute features a simple plaque bearing Jessica's image and the words that guided her life: "Justice is love in public action." "She would have loved this," Marcus says quietly. "She would have run it better than both of us." Elijah responds with a smile, "But she'd be proud of you, especially your decision." Marcus's acceptance letter to Howard University's pre-law program sits framed in Elijah's office at home, a path neither of them had anticipated before that rainy night that changed everything. As they step outside to greet their guests, Elijah scans the crowd. So much has changed in a year. Boston Memorial Hospital, under new leadership after Barton's resignation, has established a pioneering health equity initiative that Elijah co-chairs. The Boston Police Department, still rebuilding from the ground up, has implemented reforms that are becoming a national model. Even Officer Brennan, serving a reduced sentence in exchange for his testimony, has begun speaking to police cadets about the slippery slope from bias to brutality. The cost has been high: careers ended, reputations destroyed, long-held trust shattered. But as Elijah steps to the podium to officially open the institute, he sees something in the gathered faces that transcends the pain of the past year. Possibility. A year ago, he begins, "My son and I experienced firsthand what so many in our community have endured for generations: the betrayal of those sworn to protect us, the failure of systems designed to ensure justice. What made our experience different wasn't the injustice itself, but the privilege and platform that allowed us to fight back." He gestures to the institute behind him. "This space exists to extend that privilege and platform to everyone who needs it, to ensure that no one's story goes unheard, no one's rights undefended, simply because they lack resources or connections. Marcus joins him at the podium, shoulders squared, voice steady. My mother believed that justice requires both truth and action. The truth can be painful, as we've all seen this past year. But without action, truth alone changes nothing. Together, father and son cut the ribbon stretched across the Institute's entrance. As applause rises from the crowd, Elijah feels Jessica's presence almost tangibly, in Marcus's determined stance, in the community gathered before them, in the work that lies ahead. Later, as guests tour the facility, Diana Watkins approaches Elijah with a young woman beside her. "Dr. Carter, this is Zoe Mitchell. She has a story I think you should hear." The young woman, barely older than Marcus, twists her hands nervously. "My brother was stopped by police 3 years ago. He didn't survive the encounter. The official report said he was armed, but he wasn't. We tried to fight it, but no one would listen. Then I saw what happened to you, how you fought back. And I thought maybe." Elijah meets her eyes, recognizing the pain, the anger, the hope. "The Institute was created for exactly this reason, Ms. Mitchell. Let's talk inside." As they walk toward the consultation room, Elijah glances back at Marcus, who has engaged a group of high school students in animated conversation about internship opportunities. In his son's gestures, Elijah sees echoes of Jessica's passion, his own determination, and something uniquely Marcus, a resolve forged in trauma, but focused on transformation. The night that Officer Brennan's boot connected with Elijah's ribs, something broke, not just bone, but illusion. The illusion that success, education, and respectability could shield them from systemic injustice. The illusion that individual achievement could substitute for collective change. But from that breaking has come a rebuilding. Not perfect, not complete, but real. A father and son transformed into advocates. A personal injury transmuted into public action. A moment of powerlessness converted into a movement for change. As Elijah sits with Zoe Mitchell, listening to another story of injustice that demands response, he feels the weight of responsibility and the lightness of purpose. This is the legacy he will leave, not just lives saved in the operating room, but systems transformed through persistence, truth, and unflinching courage. Outside, Boston continues its own healing process, still imperfect, still struggling with the deep wounds of history and the fresh scars of revelation. But something has shifted, a diagnosis has been made, a treatment begun. The prognosis, while guarded, carries hope. And in the quiet moments when doubt creeps in, when the enormity of the work ahead seems overwhelming, Elijah remembers his son's face on that rain, slick night, and Jessica's voice in his memory, and the faces of those who have found their own courage through his stand. Some fights choose you, and when they do, you better come swinging. Dr. Elijah Carter, surgeon father, catalyst for change, continues to swing, not with fists but with truth, not in anger but in determination, not for vengeance but for justice. The healing continues. That rain slicked night in Boston, a flash of blue and red lights reflecting off wet pavement. A routine traffic stop that was anything but routine. It wasn't just the beginning of one family's fight for justice. It was a spark that illuminated a system operating in shadows, a catalyst that transformed bystanders into witnesses, witnesses into advocates, advocates into agents of change. Consider where it began. A respected neurosurgeon, a 16-year-old son, a moment of brutality captured on video. Then trace the ripples, a viral hashtag, a whistleblower finding courage, a journalist connecting dots, a community demanding answers, a network of corruption exposed, a city forced to confront its failings. Now, 1 year later, the effects continue to spread. Police academy curricula rewritten, judicial oversight strengthened, community review boards empowered. Most importantly, stories being told that once would have remained silent. This isn't a fairy tale where justice arrives complete and perfect. Officer Brennan serves a reduced sentence, while others who enabled him walk free. Judge Sullivan's confession exposed a network, but some of its members remain in positions of influence. The Boston Police Department has new leadership and policies, but culture change comes slowly. Resistance remains entrenched, and old habits reassert themselves when cameras turn away. Yet something fundamental has shifted. The expectation of accountability has taken root. The possibility of transformation has been demonstrated. The connection between individual dignity and collective action has been reaffirmed. Dr. Elijah Carter didn't set out to become a symbol or spark a movement. He simply refused to accept that his son should witness injustice without response. He refused to believe that his professional success should purchase his silence. He refused to concede that some systems are too powerful to change. In doing so, he embodied what his late wife had always taught: justice isn't an outcome achieved once and forever. It's a process, a practice, a continuous commitment to recognizing humanity in each other and reflecting that recognition in our systems and structures. The Jessica Carter Institute for Justice now stands as a physical manifestation of that commitment, a place where stories are heard, injuries documented, patterns exposed, and strategies developed. A place where Zoe Mitchell can seek justice for her brother. A place where Marcus Carter can channel his trauma into purpose. A place where the next generation of advocates can learn from both victory and setback. The work continues because it must. Because systems don't transform themselves. Because power doesn't willingly relinquish its advantage. Because justice, like healing, requires vigilance, expertise, and collective effort. As evening falls on the Institute's opening day, Elijah and Marcus Carter stand together on the building's small balcony, watching Boston's lights emerge against the darkening sky. The city looks peaceful from this distance, its conflicts and contradictions softened by dusk. "Do you ever wish we could go back?" Marcus asks suddenly. To before that night, Elijah considers the question, understanding its layers. Before the assault, before the threat to Marcus's future, before their lives became public property, their trauma a rallying cry, their names attached to a movement larger than themselves. "No," he answers finally, because going back would mean unknowing what we now know. It would mean returning to a comfortable blindness. Marcus nods, seeming to understand. "Mum used to say that once you see injustice clearly, you can't unsee it. And once you can't unsee it, you're responsible for addressing it." Elijah finishes. Jessica's words, which once seemed like abstract principle, now feel like lived truth. Below them, the last guests depart. Regina Hayes deep in conversation with Diana Watkins. Vanessa Washington helping Angela Brennan navigate the stairs with her infant daughter. Thomas Mercer exchanging contact information with a group of community organizers. Unexpected allies. Unanticipated community. The collateral beauty of their difficult journey. "Dad," Marcus says after a moment, "do you think it will last?" The changes, the reforms, the awareness. It's the question that haunts Elijah in quiet moments, the fear that all they've sacrificed and accomplished might fade with the next news cycle, the next crisis, the next distraction. "I don't know," he admits. Systems resist change. Power protects itself. Memory fades. That's why institutions like this one matter: to document, to remind, to persist when attention shifts. He puts his arm around his son's shoulders, feeling simultaneously protective of the young man Marcus, still is and respectful of the advocate he's becoming. "What I do know is that something genuine has changed in Boston. Not just policies and personnel, but consciousness. People who couldn't or wouldn't see now can and do. And once enough people see clearly, going back to blindness becomes impossible." As they turn to go inside, Elijah's phone buzzes with a text from an unknown number. He opens it, reads the brief message, and smiles. "What is it?" Marcus asks. "Another officer," Elijah explains. "Wants to talk. Says he has documentation of similar patterns in the Cambridge department." Marcus sighs, a sound somehow containing both wariness and determination. "It never ends, does it?" "No," Elijah agrees. "But that's not failure. That's the nature of healing: continuous, demanding, necessary." They step back inside the Institute, where Zoe Mitchell waits with her brother's story, where tomorrow will bring new challenges and possibilities, where the work of justice continues. Because that's the thing about truth. Once spoken, it demands action. And that's the thing about action. Once begun, it creates momentum. And that's the thing about momentum. Once established, it becomes legacy. The legacy of a rainy night, a surgeon's stand, a son's courage, a wife's principles, a community's awakening. The legacy of Dr. Elijah Carter, who set out to heal bodies and found himself healing something larger, the broken bones of justice in a city A system, a nation still struggling to fulfill its promises. The story doesn't end here. It merely enters a new chapter. Because justice, like healing, is not a destination but a journey. And this journey continues, strengthened by those who refuse to look away, speak softly, stand down. Those like Elijah and Marcus Carter, who faced power with truth and transformed a moment of brutality into a movement for change. Who remind us that even the most entrenched systems can be reformed when enough hands join in the work. Enough voices join in the demand. Enough hearts join in the commitment to seeing clearly and acting boldly. The healing continues, the justice unfolds, the legacy grows. And Boston, scarred but strengthening, wounded but waking, bears witness to what becomes possible when one family's pain becomes a community's cause. When individual dignity connects to collective action, when the easier path of silence gives way to the harder, truer path of speaking up and standing firm. This is how change happens, not all at once, not without resistance, not without setback and sacrifice, but it happens, nonetheless. Ask Dr. Elijah Carter, standing in the institute named for his wife, watching his son grow into a voice for justice, receiving messages from others ready to break their silence. Ask Officer Michael Brennan, who finally faced the consequences of his actions and now speaks to cadets about the corrosive effect of unchecked power and bias. Ask Angela Brennan, who chose truth over loyalty and created a different future for her daughter. Ask Thomas Mercer, who found that one ethical stand inspired others to follow. Ask Diana Watkins, whose reporting uncovered corruption that many believed untouchable. Ask Zoe Mitchell, who watched one family's fight and found courage to renew her own. Ask Boston itself, still imperfect, still struggling, but facing its shadows with greater honesty than before. They will tell you change is possible. Justice is worth the fight. Healing, though painful, brings wholeness that cannot be achieved through denial or avoidance. And sometimes, on a rain-slicked street in the darkness, a moment of cruelty can give rise to a movement of conscience that reverberates far beyond that single encounter. This is the legacy of Dr. Elijah Carter, not just lives saved in the operating room, but systems transformed through persistence, truth, and unflinching courage. A legacy still unfolding, still challenging, still healing. The work continues, and so does the hope. For Boston, for justice, for a future where power serves humanity rather than subjugating it. For a world where what happened to Elijah and Marcus Carter on that rainy night becomes increasingly unimaginable. The journey continues, and they keep walking forward step by determined step into a future they are helping to create. That is their story. That is their legacy. That is their truth. And truth, once spoken, cannot be unheard.